Now, for me, it has always been very easy to recover from a burnout because of my manager. It's very easy for me to communicate my problems with her, because I always say this, it's very important to be vocal about what you're feeling. But if there is a lack of communication between you and your supervisor or even your partner, that would be the main reason of your burnout. Ali Kao is back with a new content. So, is it a burnout or depression? This video will be in two parts. The first part is going to be solely about a burnout, the symptoms of a burnout, what causes a burnout, and how can we recover from a burnout easily. And then the second part of the video will be about depression, because I found it very interesting to talk about these two topics together, but we can't talk about them both in the same video. They have very similar symptoms, but depression is a much more severe case of a burnout, let's say. And it has many different types, but we will talk about the major depressive depression in the next video, and how it is very easy to shift from a burnout to a major depressive disorder. But before talking about a burnout, I want to tell you that all the information that I'm using in this video and in the next video as well about depression is from a book called The Upward Spiral, which is written by Alex Korb, a neuroscientist, and he explains very well the causes of depression and how to combat depression if you are going through one. So yes, let's talk about a burnout. Now first, what is a burnout? What do we mean by a burnout? A burnout used to be a term used to describe people who are exhausted at work, until the World Health Organization finally, and for the first time in 2019, described it and identified it as a mental health condition, which means it's a big deal. If you are experiencing a burnout, you need to watch this video till the end, because it's very important to realize what you're going through is a burnout before it can easily become a depression. So yes, what are the symptoms of a burnout, and what is a burnout exactly? A burnout is simply related to a chronic work-related stress, and sometimes it can even be caused or triggered by a relationship, a toxic relationship, or even by parenting. So anything that makes you feel like you're just putting an effort in, you have received nothing back in return, that is a burnout. That's the main cause of a burnout. Let's talk about the symptoms of a burnout. How can we tell if we are experiencing burnout or not? The most common symptom is exhaustion. So you basically feel like you're exhausted and you just don't feel like working anymore. You just want to quit because everything feels like a routine and you don't feel like going to work anymore. Now, that's a bit tricky because almost all of us feel like that, especially if you're doing something you don't like. That's why there should be more symptoms for you to be diagnosed with a burnout. And then the second symptom, which is a very obvious symptom, it's cynicism. It's when you become very skeptical and cynical, pessimistic about almost everything at work and even with your colleagues at work. So that's when you feel like nothing makes sense to you. You start becoming very doubtful about everything, and life becomes very dark to you. Now, unfortunately, there are people who naturally have these personal traits like perfectionism, cynicism, pessimism. These personal traits can easily trigger your burnout if you don't know how to control them. That's why people who are perfectionists, they get burned out easily. Now, the third symptom of a burnout is something that you cannot observe yourself. This can be easily observed by your manager, for example. It's when your performance goes down sharply. It's basically called reduced professional ability. So you can't perform well anymore at work. Even if you think that you are meeting all your deadlines, you might finish your tasks, but you're not finishing them successfully. That's actually a very bad symptom of a burnout. That's when you don't even realize how bad it has affected you, because you can easily lose your job if you don't know where to stop. Now, these are the main symptoms of a burnout. Sometimes if you don't recognize your burnout and you keep working hard, it can easily develop a physical symptom like a headache or even a stomach ache. I have personally experienced a burnout. I actually experienced a burnout last week, and this is why I just couldn't upload a video on YouTube, because I couldn't think about the process of, coming up with a title or a description. I just couldn't do it. And my appetite was zero. I almost lost 4 kilograms within a week, because you just can't have food anymore. You lose your appetite, and that's how dangerous it can be if you are burned out and you're not aware of it. And I'll tell you shortly what I personally did to recover from my burnout. But let's talk about first the causes of burnout, because if we know what causes the burnout, we can easily find solutions for them. But before talking about that, I'll go get my coffee and sit somewhere more comfortable. This is much better. So one of the major reasons of burnout is unreasonable time pressure. And what we mean by that is when your manager or when your company is expecting you to do so much done within a very short period amount of time. It's doable, it's manageable, but not for a long term, because your team will get exhausted very easily. Yes, you can manage by taking overtime, but for how long can you take overtime in your career life? It can be very effective for a while, and for some people it can even work for a very long time, but not forever. And then the second one, which is my favorite, it's the lack of communications with your manager or supervisor. Now, for me, it has always been very easy to recover from a burnout because of my manager. It's very easy for me to communicate my problems with her, because there's this continuous communication between me and my manager. It's very important to be vocal about it, because I always say this, it's very important to be vocal about what you're feeling. But if there is a lack of communication between you and your supervisor or even your partner, that would be the main reason of your burnout. Now, another major or big cause of a burnout is lack of role clarity. I have heard this sentence from almost everyone. Some employees are confused. They feel like they don't have a clear role. That's why they are always working, but they feel like they have done nothing, because they don't know what they're expected to achieve. They're just achieving, but they don't know whether this is the right thing to achieve or not, because there is no clarity of role. They're just performing, they're achieving targets, but they don't know if these targets are their targets. You'll always work, but never feel like you're working. It's very important to know your role and what's expected from you in that department. Now, this next cause of burnout is something very difficult to deal with. It's basically unmanageable workload. Many big companies are using this. They're downsizing their employees as a cost reduction strategy, but the problem here is that there will be an unmanageable workload on the people who have survived in the organization. So basically, there are big companies in the world like BMW, for example, in 2019. They decided to cut 6,000 jobs in Germany by 2022. So by next year, there will be almost 6,000 unemployed people whose tasks will be transferred to people who have survived in the organization. That is a big problem, because when there is less manpower, I shouldn't use the word manpower because it sounds sexist. When there is less employees in the organization, obviously there will be more workload for the people who have survived within the organization. So yes, it's something that we cannot talk about, because at the end of the day, it's the decision of the HR to hire someone else for your team or not. But I personally suggest that you come up with efficient ways to get your work done. For example, if you're working with data, work on Google Studio, for example, to automate most of your tasks. And then finally, the main cause of a burnout is an unfair treatment. So that's when you feel like you're being exploited by the company. And not only by the company, actually sometimes even in a relationship, you feel like you are being used. And that's when you feel like you are, just giving in the relationship and you get nothing back in return. So that's when you get easily burned out. Okay, so now we talked about all the possible causes of a burnout, but what do we need to do when we are burned out and we realize that we are going through a lot? Here's what I usually do when I get burned out, and maybe it can work for you as well. 3 steps. Follow these 3 steps and you will be fine. The first thing is to become more vocal. So talk about it. If you feel like you're being overloaded, when you feel like you can't even respond to an email, that's when you know that you are burned out and you need to talk about that to your manager or your supervisor. Because if you're not communicating that with your manager, then when you avoid people and your performance goes down, you might lose your job. And people don't know what's going on in your life, so they might even take it personal. So be more vocal about it, And the second step is when you finally communicate everything with your manager, this is where you need to take a break. I understand that most of you are very overloaded with many tasks, but you need to take a break. Even if you are meeting all the deadlines, you still need a break because this will not last long. For me, I personally take a 1 day or sometimes 2 days off where I actually do nothing. I call it a 1 nothing to do day. I simply don't do anything. I even when I watch a TV show, I make sure that it requires 0 brain cells. So all I do is I stay away from people, I stay away from everything, even social media. And that's why, as I said, I didn't post anything last week because I was just burned out and I didn't feel like doing anything. I had to do this, and this is why I am here and I'm doing much better. So this is the second step. The third step, you need to recognize the root of your burnout, because if we don't find out what's actually causing this burnout, it can easily become a depression, and you don't want to get there. We'll talk about all the details about depression, the symptoms and the differences between depression and burnout in the next video, but believe me, you don't want to get there. If you can take a vacation, or if you can just, stay away from people for at least 2 days. 2 days. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm hoping that none of you are going through that right now, but if you are, please feel free to talk to me. You can even approach me on my Instagram account. We can talk about it, because sometimes all you need is just to let it out and talk to someone. And sometimes if your burnout is in a severe state, you might need a professional therapy. So approach me, talk to me, and tell me about your experience. Maybe we can find you a professional therapist wherever you are. So yeah, stay strong. You can do it, because I'm pretty sure you have gone through the same shit before and you're still alive. So you can do it again. Thank you very much for watching my videos. It means a lot to me. And as I said, if you're feeling down, feel free to talk to me. I'm here for you. And stay positive and healthy until my next content. And cheers. This is coffee. It's halal.